Hi, everybody. And welcome to section 1.3, which deals with adding and subtracting integers. Okay, so what are our goals for this section? Our goals are to use negatives and opposites to simplify expressions with absolute value. What the heck is absolute value? And then, of course, to add and subtract integers. All right, so let's get into that. Using negative and opposites. So far, we've used the counting numbers and whole numbers, but if you've ever experienced a temperature below zero or accidentally overdrawn your checking account, that's me right there. You're already familiar with negative numbers, right? Numbers that are less than zero. Negative numbers are to the left of zero on the number line. See here. Here you go. Here's a negative number. The arrows on the ends of the number line indicate that the numbers keep going forever. So this goes on to negative infinity and this goes on to positive infinity. There's no biggest positive and there's no smallest negative. Zero is neither positive or negative. It's just right there in the middle. Anything to the right of the zero is positive. To the left of zero is negative on the number line, okay? So there you go. Again, so if you look at a number line, this maybe goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you notice, the numbers increase as you're going from left to right, and they decrease or get smaller going to the left, okay? So going to the right, they get larger, and if you're going to the left, they get smaller. Smaller, okay? Or lower in value, right? -5 is less than -4, and -4 is less than -3, and so on, okay? Just quickly remind you that this means less than. The symbol, this inequality is less than. And that this inequality, the alligator teeth opening to the left, is called greater than. This is when we're reading from left to right. Okay, so these are called the integers. Basically, all the counting numbers, zero, and the negative numbers, the whole negative numbers, that's called an integer, okay? So let's go ahead and order these numbers. So for A, 14 is what? Is it, so you can either use less than or greater than. 14 is definitely greater than 6, yeah? -1 is to the left, so it's less than 9. So that's one way you can tell. Imagine a number line and say, okay, where would it be on the number line? -1, is that greater than or less than -4? So here's -4, and here's -1. -1 is to the right of -4, so it's greater than, okay? It makes sense. If you owe $1, that's better than owing $4, yeah? So 2 and -20, of course, 2 is going to be greater than -20. Okay, let's talk about opposites. The opposite of a number is the number that's the same distance from zero on the number line, but on the opposite side. So let's say here's our 0. Let's say here was +3. It's 3 spaces away, 1, 2, 3 on the right. Let's go 3 spaces to the left, 1, 2, 3, and that's -3. So the opposite of 3 is -3, okay? And we use this minus sign to show that, okay, or a little tiny negative. -A means the opposite of A. So what we read is, when we see here, we read this, we look at this, we say the opposite of A. Or you can say -A, right? So let's go ahead and find a couple of opposites, all right? So what is the opposite of 7? That would just be -7, yeah? Not too bad. What's the opposite of -10? Well, -10 is on one side, the other side would be +10, yeah? Okay, and then what's the opposite? What's the opposite of -6? So remember, well, actually, let me just say something really quickly. Whenever you see a minus and then the parenthesis and then another one, this is the opposite of the opposite, so you can combine them to become a positive. So this actually means +6. Or we don't usually write +6, so you can just write 6, okay? Later on, if it's in part of an expression, yeah, you would write +6. Okay, so A, find the opposite of +4. On the number line, the opposite of 4 is -4. The opposite of -3 would be +3. And then again, this here, this little sleepy eye kind of thing can become a plus, and that's a 1. Or you can think of it as the opposite of -1, which is +1. Okay, so whatever floats your boat, however you want to think about it, it's all good, as long as it's correct. Okay, so integers, we just said that. Whole numbers and their opposites are called the integers. These are the numbers. Let's do a couple of evaluations. Okay, so evaluate -x, or the opposite of x when x is -8. So that's just going to be +8, okay? And then, oh, and when x is +8, sorry, this was b, and then this was, okay, I looked at the wrong thing. This is b, just kidding. So the opposite of 8 when x is +8, sorry, it would be -8, and then b is the one that I was trying to do. When x is -8, that would be negative of a negative, which is positive, okay? So more of the same thing that we've just been doing. Okay, now let's talk about absolute value. So absolute value is, now it's very important that you understand this definition because when you see the absolute value bars, it's different than a bracket. It's different than parentheses. So we have to make sure that we understand what it means, okay? So the absolute value of a number is the distance from 0 on the number line, okay? So we write that as absolute value of n. So notice that these are straight bars going straight up and down. Okay, that does not, it's not the same as brackets, okay? Or parentheses, okay? So no, this is absolute value. Okay, so here, the absolute value of 5, well, how far away is it from 0? It's 5 units, so it's the absolute value of 5 is 5, okay? Now, what about -5? The absolute value of -5, okay? How many units is it away from 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's +5. Okay, there are 5 units away, all right? Now, one thing we need to also know is that the absolute value is always positive. Absolute value of a number is always positive. Why is that? Why is it always positive? Well, because it's talking about a distance, okay? And distance is never negative in our world today as we understand it, okay? Now, if we're talking about maybe some kind of crazy, alternate universe, time travel kind of situation, well, who knows about that? But right now, in this class, in this math, and this time, distance is positive, okay? You're going somewhere, you go positively, okay? You measure it, it's a positive measurement. Okay, so that's again. So it's always positive or it's greater than or equal to 0, right? So that's another way. It's non-negative, basically, okay? So let's say it properly. Non-negative, meaning that it's all the positive integers and including 0. It could be including 0, okay? Okay, so let's simplify. Let's use it. So here we have absolute value of 3. So the absolute value of 3 is just 3. It's kind of, all right. The absolute value of -44, that's just +44, remember? The absolute value of 0, that's just 0. Doesn't mean anything. It's on itself. It's 0 distance from itself. All right, let's continue. Absolute value of -13, that's just +13. Absolute value of 47, you guessed it, it's just +47. And again, absolute value of 0, we just did that, that's equal to 0. Okay, let's do a super fun example. More super fun examples. Let's compare these things, okay? Let's use absolute value in simplification. Now, this is a big note, okay? Note. When you take the negative of an absolute value of a number, that does not mean the same as finding the opposite of a number, okay? There's two different things, okay? So let's go through this carefully, okay? So when you hear, let's look at A. A, we have the absolute value of -5, and we're comparing it to the opposite of the absolute value of -5. So what's the opposite value of -5? That's just 5. And we're comparing that to what? The opposite of, now what's the absolute value of -5? That's just +5, yeah? So here, 5 is going to be greater than -5. So remember, it's greater than. Now, if it was a parenthesis, remember that in this case, if you have a negative of a negative in a parenthesis, that becomes a positive, okay? But that does not happen for absolute value. In fact, it stays the opposite of an absolute value will always be negative because the absolute value is always positive. So remember, so this is not this. They're different, okay? They mean different things, okay? Okay, so now we have 8, and we're comparing it to the opposite of absolute value of a negative 8. So that's just opposite of 8. So that's greater than. Sorry about that. It keeps doing that. Stop doing that. Okay, so that's B. And then C, we have negative 9, and then we're comparing it to negative 9 because that's the opposite of an absolute value, so that's equal. Okay, and then D, we have, so here the parentheses, remember, opposite of an opposite, that's positive 16, and we're comparing it to negative of an absolute value, so that would be negative 16. So make sure you understand the difference, okay? So see, just be very aware of this, okay? So this is so now we can add that to our grouping symbols. Absolute value, it's considered another grouping symbol. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's simplify 24 minus the absolute value of 19 minus 3 times 6 minus 2. So we're going to do, remember PEMDAS. Don't forget PEMDAS. Okay, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We'll bring this down. And we're going to look at this first, okay? But looking at this as if it was another little problem, ignoring everything else, we're going to do this parentheses first, right? Inside. So it would be 19 minus 3 times, and then 6 minus 2 is just 4 today. Okay, so that's all I did. Everything else I just wrote. So 24 minus the absolute value of 19 minus, and then we're going to do 3 times 4 first because that is multiplication, okay? Why is it doing that? Okay, yeah, so that's it. So then the next step would be 24 minus the absolute value of 19 minus 12, which is 7 today, and that's just positive 7. So I'm going to bring it up here. 24 minus 7 is going to be 17 today, and that's our answer, okay? So just make sure you understand this because you're going to see absolute values. Yes, you use them as grouping symbols similar to parentheses, but they don't mean the same thing as parentheses, okay? Absolute value is a little bit stronger. Whatever is inside the absolute value, it turns it positive. So that's one thing to think about. Okay, so then we have 19 minus, let's bring everything else down, 11 minus, and we're going to look at this first. 4 times 3 minus 1 is 2. Oops, why did I write 3? Who knows? Okay, close the absolute value. 19 minus, and then here 11 minus. 4 times 2 is 8, okay? So then we have 19 minus the absolute value of 11 minus 8, which is 3. So 19 minus 3. Which is just 16, okay? All right, so if you want to go over this, push pause, go over it, but make sure you understand these examples. All right, so now we're going to talk about adding positive and negative integers. Okay, so this is where I'm going to deviate from the book just a tad, okay? The book goes into counters, and that's all well and good. If that helps you, do the math manipulatives, but I'm not going to ask you to do it for credit in regards to just for me and the way that I teach it. I like to teach it all one thing. So I'll try to still use the book examples, but I'm going to talk about it in a much simpler way. Okay, so first of all, here's some things that you need to know. When you're adding, or in other words, you can think of them as you're combining integers. Start kind of thinking that I'm combining the integers, okay? Why? And I'll explain why in a second, as we go. So when we have the same signs, we add them, right? Because 5 plus 3 is 8 today. And if we have a negative 5 plus a negative 3, that's negative 8, yeah? Now, when the signs are different, we subtract, okay? This is more like combining. So negative 5 plus 3, we're going to subtract 5 and 3, but then the larger sign is 5, right? So that's going to be negative 2, which makes sense because if you have negative 5 in your bank account and you add $3, you're going to get negative 2, okay? So here we go, 5 plus a negative 3, that's different signs. So we're going to subtract. The positive is higher, so we keep the positive, okay? All right, so when combining like terms, meaning adding or subtracting, you can think to yourself, same signs, add, keep the sign, different signs, subtract, okay? that sums it up pretty much. And you'll see it again. Let's do some super fun examples. Okay, so 1 plus 4, we're adding, it's positive. Okay, -1 plus -4, same signs, okay, positive. 2 plus 4 is 6 today. -2 plus -4, -6. -1 plus 5, different signs, subtract. And which one do we keep? We keep the sign of the larger, it's positive. So that's going to be 4. Different sign, subtract. 5 minus 1, right? So that's 4 again, but the larger one is negative, so it's going to be -4. Okay, different sign, subtract. So that's going to be 4 minus 2, which is 2. We keep the sign of the larger, so it's positive. Okay, so when we subtract, just do larger minus smaller, and then, you know, it's easier that way. So 2 plus -4 is 2 minus 4. So again, you can think of it as 4 minus 2, but you keep the larger sign, so that's -2, okay? So subtraction is the same. Remember that subtracting, one thing I want to introduce, subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So the same rules apply that we just said. So let's say here, when you have 5 minus 3, that's going to be 5 minus 3 is 2. -5, remember this thing becomes a plus. That's the same as -5 plus 3, which would be -2, right? This one, -5 minus 3, same signs, add, keep the sign. This is going to be, remember this changes to a plus, okay? 5 plus 3, and that's going to be 8. Okay, so let's do a couple more examples. You can hit pause if you want to try this on your own, which I highly recommend, or just follow along with me. So 7 minus 5 is 2 today. -7 minus the opposite of 5. Remember, -7, that just becomes a plus 5. Okay, now this is different sign, subtract. Keep the sign of the larger. 6 minus 4 is 2 today. -6 plus 4, different sign, subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2, but the sign, the larger is 6, negative. So there you go. Okay, not too terrible, right? Let's do some more examples. Some more super fun examples. Did I just say that? This is the same thing as before. So, wait, it looks like it, right? Sorry. I think I already did this one. The top two I did not. 7 minus 4 is 3. -7 plus 4. That's going to be -3. -3 minus 1, -4. This minus of a minus is 3 plus 1. That's 4. And we did not do this. I thought we did. -6 minus 4 is -10. And then 6 minus a minus, that's plus. Okay. This becomes a plus, and that's 10, positive 10. And this is negative, okay? Even more super fun examples. Okay, let's look at this, okay? So notice the following. This is 13 minus 8. So what is that? That's 5. 13 plus a -8, that's the same thing, okay? Because when you see plus a minus, that becomes a minus, okay? So that's just 5 also. And that's pretty much the same deal with all of these. So -17 minus 9, that's -26. Same sign, subtract. Same thing here, -26. 21 minus 13, that's going to be 8 today. Same thing as this, 8. This is the same thing. Same signs, add, keep the sign, okay? I don't think I need to. I think you can see that these are all the same problem. So 15 minus 7, what is 15 minus 7, people? That is 8. The same thing as 15 plus a -7. Okay, so I guess if we're going to keep writing them. Okay, so -14 minus 8, that's -22, is the same as -14 plus a -8. Okay, now remember the sleepy, this becomes a plus. 9 plus 15, that is 24 today, and that's also 24. And here, -7, this becomes a plus, different sign, subtract, that's a 3, keep the sign of the larger, so that's -3. And that's the same thing here, okay? What more examples? Yes. Okay, so now let's use PEMDAS. So PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, that's order of operations. So we're going to do parentheses first. 7 minus, what's -4 minus 3 is -7 minus 9. Now this becomes a plus, right? So this is 7 plus 7, 14 minus 9, and then that is 5. So here, 8 minus, and then we're going to combine these. That's -4, right? Because same signs add. So then we have 8 plus 4, that's 12, minus 9, that becomes 3. Okay, and then here we have finally 12 minus, let's do the parentheses first, right? Inside the parentheses first, let's not forget the rules. Same signs add. So this becomes a plus, 12 plus 15, 27, minus 14, that's going to be 13 today, okay? Alrighty, so this was a short one. So that's it for you. 1.3, you did it. 185 to 253 odd. If you don't have enough time, because I know we're going to be doing Newton also, go ahead and do every other odd. Fine. That's fine. Okay, so that's it. Good luck. Practice until you get it, and then I will see you on the next video.